Hey there, my name is Mackenzie, and if you're new here, welcome to my art journal with me series. If you're returning, welcome back. I haven't picked up my art journal in about a year, so it felt way overdue to pull this out and get creating. Today's spread is going to focus on autumn as the main theme, using a bunch of unused pictures and scraps of stuff from previous projects. One of my goals for the next few months is to use up as much of the supplies I have as possible, so this is the beginning of that. I'll also be making use of these real leaves that I picked up off the ground while on my walks over the last few weeks. With traditional drying and preserving methods for leaves and flowers and such, they often lose their color, and I wanted to prevent that. I saw online that you could preserve their color with Mod Podge, which, despite my crafty hobbies, I actually didn't own and had never used before. I bought a small bottle of the matte kind on Amazon and gave it a go, and they turned out pretty okay, but I do have a few notes to those who may want to give it a go. I don't know if it actually preserves them, as no one I've seen who's tried this has had the leaves long enough to see how they hold up in the long run, so I don't know if this method is better than traditional ones in that regard. When applying the Mod Podge, put a very thin coat of this stuff, because although it does dry clear, if there's too much pooled in one place, and that will happen with leaves because they have all those little divots and the veins and stuff, and they're not perfectly flat, it will give sort of a whitish sort of color. The first batch I did had this pretty bad, which you can see on some of these. The color looks almost muted and kind of weird, like you can see the film of glue basically over top of it, but a lot of these were red, so it just came up more noticeable on those ones. I think for batch 2 I used a much thinner amount, and not only did it dry better and they weren't as discolored, they also didn't wrinkle up as much, so less is more here. Anyway, let's get back to the spread building. A lot of these images I printed out like 3 to 5 years ago and never made use of them for their original purpose or project, which was probably my bujo at the time, so it was nice to feel like they were finally being put to use and being made into something beautiful. I forgot I had these little fake leaves in my supplies box, so I didn't make use of them as I would be using the real ones, but I gotta find a use for them while it's still the right season for it. Because I had so much to work with, I started by narrowing it down, picking out what looked best together color-wise. For this spread, I ended up sticking to darker tones, reds and oranges and yellows, for a more traditional autumnal color palette. This picture with the teacup here is going to be the base that I'll be building around, and I thought the poem on the book was fitting as it is October and all. I have a very uncreative tendency to just take a full page picture and just stick it on one side and call it a day, but today I'm going out of my comfort zone and spicing things up just a little bit by tearing the one side, anxiously trying not to tear into the book part of the image, because then obviously my whole vision is ruined and I'll have to throw the whole picture away. Anyway, that went well, so I did it again with the top edge to create this marvel of creativity. I'm just gonna stick it down with double-sided tape, but only on the edge that's flush with the paper's edge, because if I want to move it or change it, it'll be easier to just pull it off and do that. Like what I just did. While going through my supply closet looking for paper to use in this spread, I ended up finding so much stuff I forgot I had and was then so excited to use for this spread, like this large page from a book or something. I really thought all I had was these small scraps I had in a baggie in my supplies box, but turns out I had entire pages of whatever this was just sitting in a file folder completely forgotten about. Absolutely criminal. Speaking of things that are criminal, I'm also going to cut out a few images. These jars of pumpkin spice and this sign, which is another thing I used to struggle with a lot. It sometimes feels wrong to cut out an image this way, but for creativity's sake, I'm gonna fight the urge to keep everything whole and take my scissors to it. Respectfully, of course. I never regret doing this, but for some reason I just worry about it every time I do until it's done and I'm like, yeah, that looks good, I'm happy I did that. It's weird because despite art journaling being a thing you do to get creative and explore and just have fun without worrying about it being perfect or just right, it's still something I worry my way through sometimes, and I often get a little caught up in whether it'll look nice or perfect or aesthetic or whatever. I know it isn't the point, but as an artist that grew up drawing what I saw around me and recreating it as best I could, and then being praised for how close I got it to the original image or to whatever it is that I drew, I find that creativity doesn't come as naturally to me as I wish it did. I sometimes have a hard time thinking outside the box and coming up with new ways to display things. When I see an image, my first thought isn't to tear it up or paint over it or distort it in some way. It's to keep it exactly the way it is and build around it. When I paint a picture, I can make small adjustments, but I'd struggle if you asked me to throw in colors that aren't present in the original image or to change too much about it. When I started doing journaling about 5 years ago, my limitations in creativity became much more noticeable to me for some reason. I think because it was a different form of art and a different style of creating, I was seeing my art style and process in a different way. So where my creativity was lacking was just much more apparent. Here I'm just putting down whatever I've got onto a page. There's no reference image or specific setup or criteria, just me and some paper and pictures and my creativity, or lack thereof. The reason I'm saying all this is that while doing this spread, I noticed how much I've evolved since I started. My first bujo was mostly whole pictures taped onto the page with some doodles around the spread and some decoration for the days of the week, and that was about as creative as I could get. They still looked nice, but were just very simple, nothing fancy. I don't have a bujo anymore, and instead I shifted to having other types of journals to decorate and be creative with, but if I had one now, I think the spreads would be much more fun and outside the box. For this spread, I really wanted to include doodles that were reminiscent of stamping. I see a lot of that in the journaling and scrapbooking community, and especially recently in a lot of the journaling and craft inspo pictures I've been consuming on Pinterest lately. I hadn't thought about it in literally years, to the point that I'd basically forgotten about it, but I suddenly remembered at like 1 a.m. the night before I filmed this that I used to have a massive stamping set, like at least 24 stamps that were passed down to me from someone in the family, and now I have no idea what happened to them. I have vivid memories of using them to make cards for loved ones as a kid, and it's like they just went missing at some point and I'd forgotten about them until now. I say missing like as if they just disappeared into thin air, but I know they were likely either thrown out or sold in a garage sale. Anyway, that aside, I don't have any cool stamps for this, and as I'm trying to lessen the amount of supplies I have, I will be fighting the urge to purchase any until I've used up most of my current supplies. Instead, I drew little mushrooms, a cute little mushroom house, and other fall-inspired doodles across the page with a standard black ballpoint pen to get that stamped ink sort of look. I also made sure to overlap some of them to add that stamped effect, and I think it did the job and came out looking really nice. I then put down a few of the smaller collage pieces like the leaves and this little border thing, and then got to slapping down a few different washi tapes to decorate the spread further. I had trouble getting the leaves to stay down, at first with double-sided tape and then with glue, but they did eventually stay in place. About 2 months ago, I received this little jar of maple shortbread cookies from my mom that came in a gift basket for her that she didn't want. I don't know how she can't eat an entire package of anything shortbread because I literally can't control myself around the stuff. It's like crack or something. Good shortbread has like a certain texture to it, so it's not even just the flavor, it's like the way that it feels to eat it is just divine. Dude, it's the best. Anyway, I don't like maple flavored stuff. It's hands down probably my least favorite flavor of any baked good, but these ones were enjoyable, and after finishing the jar, which took me a few days because I paced myself, I was cleaning the jar out to use for something eventually, and I loved this little maple sticker that was on the lid. I knew immediately it would be super cute for something autumn themed, so I popped it onto an empty sticker backing thing to store it for later, and I was beyond excited to slap this onto the spread. I almost wish I had more than one so I can use it again for something else, so it might be a good excuse to buy another jar. Because the book page got kind of lost under the rest of the collage, I decided to pop a small piece of it on top alongside the sticker to tie it back to the base of the collage and help make that sticker stand out just a little bit better. One thing I've been finding difficult about filming lately is that my phone keeps forgetting what it should be focusing on. Until a few months ago, I never had this issue, and now it's literally all of the time. If something is slightly too close to the camera, it focuses on the background the whole time by default, and if I tap the screen to help direct it to my hand or the drawing so that it focuses there, it only lasts a moment and then it goes back again, usually once I've already continued drawing and I'm not looking at the screen. It leaves me with blurry footage, and that sucks. so I'm sorry about that, but you get the idea of what I'm doing anyway, I guess. I added a few acorns to tie into the acorn washi tape and some more leafy plant doodles and called it done. I love this spread so freaking much. The colors all tie together well in a traditional autumn color palette that's really easy on the eyes. The leaves fit into the spread perfectly. I love the look of the black doodles littered around the spread, and I got to use that cute maple sticker. I think it was a good use of the leftover supplies I had. I actually ended up having so much left over and felt so energized to create more that I did a second autumn spread that will be uploaded next month. So if you liked this spread and would like to see the next one, feel free to subscribe and check out my other journal videos in the meantime. If you don't want to sub, that's fine. I get it. Bookmark or save this video so you can come back to it in a few weeks and see if I've posted again. Whichever works for you. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of this spread is and why it's the maple cookie sticker. Or the little mushroom house doodle. That's my second favorite part. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next journal with me.